Our senses are not truthful to us because all of life is an illusion. So first, a word to the so-called macrocosmos. It might get a little overwhelming if we think about the fact that our planet spins together with our bodies and our minds at 1,000 miles per hour, and they orbit around the sun at 36,000 miles per hour. And if there were to be no magnetic forces, we would be flying out into space, into the cosmos that has no beginning and no end. And there are trillions of galaxies out there. The Andromeda galaxy is the closest one to us. It is 2 million light years away. Think about that, 2 million light years. Light travels at 186,000 miles per second. So, how many miles does light travel in 1 year? I'll allow you to do the math. So, as your mind started spinning yet, mine has. So let's move on to our body, the microcosmos. Then we'll move on to our mind. So first, our bodies consist of plus or minus 50 trillion cells living together in harmony, and they all communicate with each other and our mind. Every single cell has a brain in the outer membrane and antennas attached to it. If we divide those cells, we come to molecules. If we divide those, we come to atoms. And if we divide those even further, we come to electrons, protons, and neurons. Atoms are vibrating with most intense energy, circling around just like miniature solar systems. If we divide the neurons further, we come to pure energy. Everything is vibrating energy. The only difference is that the certain atoms spin faster or slower, and there is more space or less space in between them, which creates the difference between you and the chair that you're sitting on. So, are you aware now that you are not what your senses tell you that you are? So let's see here. Now, if we don't treat our physical bodies right, our cells turn into renegades, and we get sick. We call it disease or dis-ease. This happens if we don't breathe slow or and deep. If we drink water, like chlorinated water, or water that's colored or sugared, or alcohol. And if we eat processed junk food, and if we don't exercise enough. In other words, if we don't do what we were meant to do when we came to this planet. In other words, but if we change those things, our sick bodies have the inner ability and the inner pharmacy to get well again. So 50 million cells are replaced every day. Our lungs exchange oxygen with carbon dioxide with the help of 5 liters of blood that pumps throughout our bodies at 4 miles per hour. The average human uses only 20% of the lungs' capacity, and of course smoking is very bad, and we're not meant to eat anything that has a face or came from something with a face. Our Ayurvedic diet is the healthiest. People in India discovered this thousands of years ago. And, as a lot of us know this already, we're supposed to drink lots of pure water. And sugar is pure poison and makes us addicted like heroin, which leads to diabetes. So if we would live healthy from the moment we were born, reaching the age of 100 wouldn't be such a fantasy or an impossibility. Metabolism is an interesting phenomenon. We eat something and it transfers into billions of new cells. Healthy or sick cells? Sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? Presently, men have a life expectancy of 78 years. Women, 82. This number was going up for many years, but this year is the first year where it started to decline. Loma Linda in Southern California is one of the 5 blue zones that exist around the world, where the average person lives 10 years longer compared to the rest of the world. And the reason is their healthy diet and lifestyle. And if nobody knows about blue zones, look it up, it's pretty interesting. And I think we have a lot to learn from the people who live in these zones. So let's move on to our brain and the minds and our senses. The average brain weighs 3 pounds and it's wrinkled and so it can fit into our skull. The left-hand side is analytical, rational, logical, planning, and detail-oriented. And it controls the right side of our body and the right side of our vision. The right-hand side of the brain is intuitive, impulsive, imaginative, creative, adventurous, and it controls controls the left side of the body and the left side of our vision. The most important moment in human evolution was the discovery, when we discovered that we exist. It's that discovery of the I am, of consciousness, which is unique to us. The second most important moment was that we can think, and that thinking is creative, and that we can think things into existence with our thoughts, and those thoughts materialize those things that we thought of. So everything around us began with a thought. It just didn't happen. In the material world, it's our senses that make us see, hear, smell, taste, and feel. If our five senses rule us, we can call it bottom-up processing, and if our conscious mind rules us, it's called top-down processing. The mind divides into conscious mind, which is also our intelligence, which makes up about 5% of our brain's capacity. The subconscious mind, which makes up 95% of our brain's capacity, and or the unconscious mind. So when we don't think at all, or when we get knocked out in the boxing ring, and the superconscious mind, as scientists call it, which appears to be the infinite mind that created it all. The brain of our brains, or minds, or central command center, are assumed to be located in the very center of our brain, where the hypothalamus and the pineal glands sit, and those are connected to the autonomous nervous system, which is our wiring harness. Involved here are also the third eye, the 7 chakras, which is right behind me. The Sushumna and the Ida and the Pingala, but don't start talking to your allopathic doctor about those things, because he will start rolling his eyes. You know how Western medicine doesn't really relate to the spiritual component of aspects of who we are. So that's why it's very important for us to have that balance with Western and spiritual medicine, which comes from the East traditionally. The conscious mind processes about 40 bytes of information per second. The subconscious mind processes about 20 million bytes of information per second. It is the subconscious mind, or personal hard drive, that regulates all of our bodily functions. It works 24/7, and as long as we live. And of course, if it starts working, we die. Most important aspect is that our mind is an electrochemical machine that operates on brain waves. Now, stick with me on this. There's a lot of information coming up. So when we sleep, it runs on delta brainwaves, which goes from 0.5 to 4 hertz. Now, shortly after we wake up, it starts to run on theta waves, which goes from 4 to 8 hertz. Now when we get up and we go to the bathroom, things start going, it starts getting active and starts running on alpha, which runs from 8 to 12 hertz. So you can see everything starting to increase gradually. By the time we make coffee and we're up and going, we're starting to run on beta, which runs from 12 to 35 hertz. So most of the time, when we're working, we're operating on beta, as we are doing now, as I speak to you and as you're sitting listening to me. An important note is it really elevates, but at really a unique time. So like, for instance, if a pilot is landing in an airliner, it's going to jump up to gamma for short periods of time, which operates on a higher brainwave than beta. When we go home, when we come home and after work, and we start to settle down, and we're relaxing, and we start to meditate, our mind goes back down beta to alpha, and before we fall asleep, we're back to theta, and as we fall asleep, we come back to delta. And this cycle repeats over and over again. So theta is the brainwave that reaches the subconscious mind. So this is an important part. The problem with it is that we always fall asleep before we get there, and when we wake up, and it moves back into alpha immediately and then to beta. So we kind of lose contact with the theta brainwave. So even years of meditation reaches deep alpha at best, EGGs have shown, hardly ever theta. Even if one hangs out in a Himalayan cave for 40 years, meditating for 12 hours a day, you'll rarely get there. So interesting is that there is a brain wave called the Schumann frequency, and this frequency operates at 7.8 hertz, which produces a heightened state of consciousness, which is very close to the same frequency, 7.83, that the planet Earth operates on. So when we meditate, we're really aligning ourselves with the frequency of the planet. So that's something you can think about next time you're meditating. Now it gets really interesting. The moment we are conceived, our mind starts registering impressions. Tests have shown that if dad yells at a mom when she's pregnant, the fetus is going to jump, it's going to gyrate. And that's because the mother's having a nervous reaction to this negative stimulus from the outside, and it's affecting the fetus, which is creating like these negative hormones inside the mother. So even the fetus is experiencing this negativity. So next comes the birth trauma. This is when this is the moment of birth, when, you know, this little body, this little head is getting squeezed out of and pushing through the birth canal. By the way, my mom pushed me out for 18 hours. I think I was in, how long was it, Mom?
27.
So, thank God for this woman here. So I was in the birth canal for a very long time, and we made it. And I think there was even a moment where we had to sign a paper. It's like my mother's life or my life. And thank goodness we're both here. So anyway, there's birth trauma. So then we pop out, and you know we were in the dark, we were in this fetus, and all of a sudden we're in this bright light, and people are catching us, and they have masks, and they pick us up, and they flip us over, and they spank us, and for the first time we take that breath, and it hurts. And this very first breath is what creates the independence of us as human beings. So our soul, many say, incarnates to this planet from the astral mind, which is a part of the infinite mind. And the spirit seems to be the connection between our soul and the astral mind. And we are born with a spiritual awareness and conditioning, which begins right after birth. And our spiritual awareness soon fades away. In the beginning, mom and dad, and even aunts and uncles, whoever is surrounding us, are always right, and with what they are telling us, because we have no critical faculties at this young age. And this is from the age of 0 to 7. And our minds run on theta brainwaves and then on delta, and we bounce back and forth between fantasy and reality. And by the time we are grown up and we've developed critical faculties, and we discover that mom and dad are no longer always right, just think of those rebellious years, our brainwaves run on higher frequencies, and this is mainly theta. We have about 65,000 thoughts every day. And unfortunately, 95% of them are negative. We never worry about positive things. I'll vouch for that. We worry about our jobs, our children, our car, our mortgage payment, and much, much more. And when we worry, which creates negative stress, just remember how it created the stress with the fetus inside. Our nervous system switches into fight and flight mode, even though there's no lion chasing us. Because remember, back in the days, fight and flight is like to survive. We humans do not spend much time in rest and restore mode. And in the fight and flight mode, our immune system and inner pharmacy shut down to enable us to fight the lion. The lion, by the way, that doesn't exist. And we use up our energy, and this is what makes us sick and prevents us from healing. Most people in today's world are constantly in fight and flight mode. Yes, stress is very bad, so try not to live with anger, hate, or fear. Because fear can turn hair gray overnight. And negative news will cause a heart to beat really fast. Bad news, by the way, if it's true or false, it doesn't matter, can lead to shock and sometimes death. So, try to live in harmony with no anger, no hate, no fear, and with lots of love. Because as we all know, as we experience in this space together, love is the best medicine. So here comes another very important issue. From the moment of birth on to the age of 7 or 8, our mind operates like a video camera. and we register everything in the subconscious mind. Every word we've ever heard, every picture we've ever seen, every smell we've ever smelled, every taste we've ever tasted, and every touch we've ever felt. The Franciscan monks used to say, give us your baby at birth and pick up your man in 7 years. In other words, by the age of 7, we are already kind of sort of done. We've been programmed, brainwashed with whatever we have been exposed to, good or bad. Just like with the house, the foundation comes first. So of course later, traumatic experiences play a role too. Death of a close friend, some kind of violence, wars, anything that creates trauma. But it should be noted, the older the trauma, the deeper it sits in us. So if we're lucky and we had loving parents in those early years, and only positive experiences throughout life, and if we never experience anything negative, we will develop differently as if we didn't. So the question is, what if we didn't? So I know people who must have had a wonderful life and caring and loving upbringing, but at the same time, I also know people who didn't. So if we didn't have a loving upbringing, does it matter? What if dad said you were worthless when you were at the age of 5? Or what if mom said she wishes she'd never had you? That kind of sits in us. It sits in our subconscious mind, and our subconscious mind registers that. So the answer is that it'll sit there deep in the subconscious mind for the rest of your life, and it will prevent you from living up to the fullest potential, even though you didn't even know it, because you just are who you are. This is how we've been programmed. Those experiences will always influence you subconsciously in whatever you do, and it will result in feelings of inferiority and that sort of thing, that feeling that you're not lovable, that you can't do this or you can't do that, or you're not deserving of this or that, or that you always screw things up. And those feelings that will make you feel inadequate, no matter how great your accomplishments are, and no matter how much money you have. You're habitually over the same old thing again and again because your subconscious mind rules you 90% of the time. It's called negative thought patterns. So, the question again, how do we fix these things? The only action in our conscious mind is thought. And with our thoughts, we create corresponding external conditions. In other words, we think things into existence, and as the limited conscious mind can influence the subconscious mind. But how do we influence the so powerful subconscious mind? Well, many people spend a lifetime and a fortune going to shrinks to resolve their childhood problems and depression. One wonders why they're called shrinks. What are they shrinking? The mind? The bank account? Or what and how are they doing it? Even today in the 21st century, most psychologists work with a mixture of Freudian psychoanalysis, which has a reported success rate of 38% after 600 sessions. And then there's also cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBT, which has a success rate of 72% after 22 sessions. What seems to work best, though, is hypnotherapy with a reported success rate of 93% after 6 sessions. Those are big numbers. That's a big difference. So the best way to practice hypnotherapy is self-hypnosis or autosuggestion. And the days of someone eating soap or barking like a dog, with the watch in front of your eyes, those days are over. What we're talking about is completely different here. Self-hypnosis is totally harmless. It can be learned by anyone. It has to do with motivation, relaxation, concentration, visualization, suggestion, and repetition. One basically quiets down or shuts down the conscious mind. The next move is to remove emotional attachments to old memories from the subconscious mind and to replace them with positive suggestions. The brain will lay down new brain cells, and after 28 days of repeating those suggestions twice daily, one begins to reprogram his or her inner hard drive. The new present turns into past memories. In other words, we do not have to live with past traumas. Well, that's pretty cool. The best way to do this is to figure out first, with the help of kinesiology and muscle testing, what one's traumas and negative thought patterns might be. You straighten out, here's how you do it. So you straighten out your arm sideways and someone else pushes it down to measure the resistance. Then you repeat the test again. To say, and you say, my name is Mary, even though your name might be John. Your mind registers Mary as a lie, and the resistance to your arm is less, so it'll go down. Then you go through your list of possible traumas and negative thought patterns and repeat the test over and over again. And then as you do this, you start to take notes. And next, you sit down on the computer to write something similar to a movie script, starting with the basics of self-hypnosis, followed by extractions of emotions to negative memories and negative thought patterns and and then you start to insert positive suggestions. Then one records the written script on an iPod or an iPhone and plugs in earbuds and lays down on a bed and listens to it twice daily. The best time for it is right after waking up and shortly before falling asleep, because then we're running on the theta brainwaves, which provides the best access to the subconscious mind. And this also applies to like when we meditate. The best times to meditate is also the same time. There's a super high-tech AVA, which is also known as audiovisual entertainment device, that is available. The most innovative pocket-sized mind manipulating device on the world's market today can produce any brainwave at any time of day. And from what I believe, we're gonna have a demonstration of that today. I guess we have one of these devices, and so we can see Burner after, we can have a demonstration of that device. The key to a successful hypnotherapy is to visualize everything, every detail, and every color, and most importantly, to believe in what your own voice is telling you, and without the slightest doubt. The deeper one can reach into the subconscious mind, the better the suggestions will stick. And nothing in the world is more powerful, and I like this part, nothing is more powerful than your own voice. So when your own voice speaks to yourself, it's gonna have the greatest impact. So be nice to yourself. Talk in a loving way and use words that you like when you're recording these things. And also use post-hypnotic suggestions throughout the day. Just tell yourself several times a day what you aim to accomplish. Now, as a final note, nobody can hypnotize you against your own will. It's you that hypnotizes you, and everyone else or anything else is only used for guidance. And by the way, everyone is hypnotizable. 70% of us fall into a light trance. 20% are hypnoidal. 10% are somnambulistic, which is a deep trance. And yes, it does take a bit of practice to get the hang of it, but don't be afraid. Try it. It's really fun to play with auto-suggestion, and the good thing is that it actually works. And by the way, watching TV or reading a book is also hypnosis. You know how we go into that zone. And it's no wonder that ad agencies already know this, because that's how they get into our heads to make us buy things. So self-hypnosis can make us more spiritual and bring us closer to the infinite mind. If we impregnate our subconscious mind with the desire, because the subconscious mind communicates with our conscious mind and our soul in our sleep, but this is not the final word on that. So now, before we end our presentation, let's talk about sleep and dreaming for a moment. Sleep is a form of unconscious meditation, where all physical senses are turned off. It quiets all voluntary activities of the body. One of the functions of sleep is to rejuvenate body, mind, and spirit, which seems to be the communicating power between the individual mind, the soul, and the infinite mind. We should sleep for 8 hours a day. It is the last fourth of our sleep pattern where we dream. And when our eyes enter the REM or REM phase, this is when our minds enter that phase. The dream state is between the waking state and the sleep state. If we sleep less than 8 hours, or if we get up at 4 a.m., we might not be dreaming. And if we don't dream, then it doesn't allow the subconscious mind to communicate with the conscious mind, which is important because they should be communicating at all times. The principal function of sleep is to permit the infinite mind and the individual mind to maintain daily contact and to relay messages and instructions to us. Dreams are part of memories, impressions, opinions, and ideas, plus new created images. In general, cells do never sleep or life would be terminated. But the queen cells rest for milliseconds when they prepare to divide to produce two identical cells. Then they resume their frantic activity once they do so. And also, as a note here, you'll always notice in dreams, we always appear as actors or observers. Well, of course, there is so much more to say about all this, but we have time limitations, as we all know. And so that's the end of today's talk. And before I go, just to let you know again, we'll continue this next Sunday with a presentation by Kamakea, which will speak on the infant mind, or God, if you like, and the spirit of our soul and our relationship with them. So again, I'd like to thank you, Werner, for speaking through me. I appreciate your trust, and I appreciate everyone's patience.